Hi, everybody. Welcome back. Hopefully, everybody had a chance to meet some new people and say hi to some old friends during the networking session. I know I did. I got to see a few people in there. Thank you for being patient and bearing with us while we worked through some technical glitches, technology, and a pandemic. But we're here and we're ready to move on to the next part of our agenda. And as we kind of return to that agenda for the rest of the day, I get the honor of introducing Matt Zone, who will bring our keynote speaker out to the stage. As I went through kind of the thank yous during my remarks earlier, I deliberately did not include Matt because I knew I had this opportunity coming. But as many of you know, Matt holds a special place in any discussion of Cleveland sustainability efforts. In 2004, when he was still a relatively new member of Cleveland City Council, he decided that the city should have an Office of Sustainability. I won't get into all the behind the scenes maneuvering that were involved in that. Some of you probably know those stories. But working in conjunction with then Council President Jackson, Matt was able to bring this idea into reality with the creation of an Office of Sustainability in the Department of Public Utilities. So that small group of dedicated individuals who worked in utilities would ultimately become the cabinet level office under Mayor Jackson in 2009. And the rest, as they say, is history. Matt served on Cleveland City Council for 19 years, fighting to embed sustainability in everything that we do, and also served as the president of the National League of Cities in 2007, bringing his commitment to Cleveland and climate action to the table in those discussions. After stepping down from Cleveland City Council in 2020, Matt has stayed directly engaged in sustainability locally and beyond through his role with the Western Reserve Land Conservancy, serving as senior vice president and director of Thriving Communities. I've known Matt for 20 years. I'm proud to call him a mentor, a colleague, and a friend. And ladies and gentlemen, I'll turn it over to Matt Zone to bring out our keynote address.
Thank you, Chief Wood. You have been an exemplary leader for our city, and we are so fortunate to have you serving in that position. It's good to be with all of you virtually. I wish we could be in person, but as Chief Wood said, I did have the high honor during my time on council to serve as the president of National League of Cities in 2017. And for those of you who don't know who the National League of Cities is, it's an organization that is comprised of cities, towns, and village leaders that focuses on improving the quality of life for their current and future residents. And it's that mindset that NLC really helps educate municipal leaders around, that we really have to think globally, but act locally. Clarence Anthony is a former mayor, and during his years of service as a mayor, he was also, too, very deeply involved with NLC. He served as its president in the mid-90s, and after running a very successful consultancy firm after his time in public life, Clarence took the reins as NLC's CEO in 2012. Clarence and NLC are extremely committed to advancing sustainability and environmental issues nationally, but also supplying local government leaders with the best practices, and not only best practices, what are those next practices and resources to accomplish these goals. It is my honor and privilege to introduce my good friend, one of my mentors, Mr. Clarence Anthony, CEO of the National League of Cities.
Hey, Matt, how are you?
Doing great, Clarence. Good to be with you.
Good to be with you. I miss you a lot because since you left the National League of Cities, and I lost a really good partner to talk to about things, especially the issues related to sustainability, which is clearly has been and will continue to be, regards to what you're doing now, your passion. And you made an impact on the National League of Cities as you've made in Cleveland. So thank you, my friend. I really miss you.
Thank you.
Michelle, I said hello as well.
I will.
Hello, everybody, and thank you so much for having me here this morning to bring remarks to the City of Cleveland's sustainability efforts. You guys really are doing some amazing things, and the National League of Cities is honored to partner with you as much as we can as we conduct research, provide technical assistance, and raise awareness about this issue to all local governments throughout America. And that's the important part that I think we need to recognize here, is that the opportunities and ideas that you're bringing to your residents in Cleveland also are being applied and shared around the nation. because I often say that what happens in one community influences what happens in other communities. And clearly, this is one of the most pressing and challenging issues for our time, for local leaders who are on the front line every day, fighting for sustainability as well as resiliency. And it will continue to be, because we're seeing it impacting the lives of our residents every day. I think the important part of today's discussion is about how do we make this an issue that people recognize that impacts everybody in the community. As Dr. Robert Bullard said, who is considered the father of environmental justice, protection should not be, and again, protection should not be distributed because of the color of your skin. Everyone deserves a clean, healthy, and sustainable and livable environment. And that's what we are pushing here at the National League of Cities. Now, as we've gone through this last year and a half and really have seen the impact of sustainability in the lives of people during this COVID-19 time, we have had to keep the issue of sustainability on the forefront. And this is one of the most pressing issues. Clearly, the pandemic, the issue of racial equity, the economy, all fits in the sustainability of those folks who have had to become more resilient and more focused on their lives. And we had to deal with extreme health issues and wealth issues. And now the weather has made the climate and sustainability issues even more important for us to pay attention to in our own backyards. From hurricanes to flooding in the South, wildfires in the West, destroyed entire communities in California and Oregon. And it's been a lot to deal with. And it's been a lot for our local leaders and a lot of our communities. So just let's add this issue of all this going on in this virtual world. So I'm pleased that you guys are continuing to focus on sustainability, and the members of your community, Cleveland community, today and in the future has to be lifted up, not only as a weather issue, but again, a wealth, housing, mental health. All of these are issues of sustainability, including our environment. Now, in Ohio, I know you've seen your fair share of severe weather, extreme weather events, rain, flooding, and high winds. And you're not a stranger to natural disasters, but unfortunately, so many of our communities have been dealing with them in a multiple way. You know, I was just in Louisiana and thinking about Lake Charles, Louisiana, which was hit with back-to-back hurricanes last year. And add this to the city, who's also challenged in the areas of justice and racial equity. These challenges have been brought to light even more over the past year and a half, and the unequal toll of the pandemics, the police shooting, the arrest. We have some challenging times in our nation right now. And the thread of equity in all of these challenges is so clear. The people who are most impacted by climate change, who are least able to prepare in advance, least able to recover afterwards, are the same folks that are impacted by the coronavirus. I remember growing up, and I grew up in a very rural, poor community, and we would have hurricanes in Florida, and it would devastate our communities. We didn't have any water, no lights, no way of communicating. But there was something about local leadership that made the difference, that brought the access to those communities. And that's what we have to remember. What is our role in terms of helping to bring and sustain our communities? Now, the critical role of cities is important, and it must take a comprehensive approach to these issues and how sustainability and climate and resilience is operationalized in a way that makes a difference, that just puts a face on the issue. And I'm committed to working with you and NLC and cities all over America to make sure that we put a face on these issues and that sustainability is threaded throughout all of your city offices and programs within Cleveland, as well as within cities all over America. And this would put all city staff working from the same frame of mind. This would mean that not just Jason or Kristen, it'll be the sustainability directors. Though they are very important, their work is just got to be integrated across all of the departments. And when a cross sector of stakeholders is at the table, decision makers, outcomes are more holistic and they have an equitable voice, because we need those that are not at the table to have people speaking on their behalf. And Mayor Jackson and the city of Cleveland should really celebrate for their ambitious and forward-thinking goal of transforming the Cleveland community into a green city on a blue lake in just 10 years. What an amazing feat. Let me just say, NLC believes that cities are stronger together and that the things we see is not just isolated in one community. It is crossing the United States. And even right here in Washington, D.C., we need to make sure that we work together to navigate the maze of the federal process and programs and make sure that we bring them down locally so we can build more resilient or mitigate the risk in a more strategic fashion. Most cities don't have control over a lot of the things that impact their communities. You know, electric utility, they don't adopt their own systems in terms of managing some of the regional issues. However, we have partnership opportunities that we can actually parlay that partnership in a way to work across our boundaries so that we join together and that we advocate for the kind of change that we need to see. Because they're not done alone. They're not just done within the geographic region of Cleveland. It's done in terms of regional climate change coalitions. And that is one of the things I want to recommend that we do, is make sure that we think global, act local, but partner regionally. For example, Kansas City Regional Climate Action Coalition is a group of more than 100 local and state officials. And we've supported their initiatives. And NLC supported their launch through our Leadership Community Resilience Grant Program. And I'll speak on that a bit because it gives credit to the local leadership and the coordinated effort that happened with the Mid-America Regional Council. They adopted a regional action plan with goals to achieve net zero emissions by 2050. Another great example is out of my home state of Florida, where I served as mayor of South Bay for over 24 years. I was part of the Southeast Regional Compact Climate Change, and it was one of the first regional agreements around. And then you have cities like Salt Lake City, Park City, and a few others who are thinking about setting their own plans to achieve 100% renewable energy. Another encouraging trend has been adopting their own local Green New Deal. Cities like Los Angeles and Chico, California, Ann Arbor, Michigan. And in some state up north, they're updating their climate plans in a way that tackle the problems specifically around housing stability, local jobs, and climate in much more of a strategic way. So I think that you can look at Buffalo. The city eliminated parking requirements completely in 27 as a result of more developers are building sharing parking lots. So I truly feel that this is our time as a region in Cleveland, as a nation, to not only think about this again in an environmental way, but think about it in a community development way. Now, I do want to be more direct and candid. We know that the people that are most often impacted, they're most often underrepresented, are people by climate solutions, usually are Black, Indigenous, and people of color. And we all need to make sure that everyone is invited at the table as we have these conversations. Our Black, Latinx, and Indigenous communities are feeling the impact of climate change, and they are ready to add their voices. Now, when I was mayor and I was dealing with these kinds of issues, I didn't understand how my hometown had in fact been historically impacted when I was growing up there. And not until I went to graduate school and started doing my graduate work around sustainability and water quality issues did I really understand that the water quality in my community in rural Florida, where they were burning sugarcane at that time, not only impacted a lot of the elderly as well as myself, the air I was breathing, the water I was drinking at that time caused a lot of diabetes, asthma, and I can go on and on with the health and quality of those residents. But when I went back, I started fighting to make sure that the quality of the water that my residents were drinking were at the highest level. Now, you think about that story and you don't imagine the historical practices that have occurred in communities all over America that have devastated the lives, cancer, diabetes, asthma, because of siting of facilities. We must acknowledge the historical planning processes and the policies that we've implemented so that we can make sure that we don't do it again. And that's why I'm so proud of what you guys are doing to make sure that you move forward and that your strategies are being updated through the Cleveland Climate Action Plan with intentional focus on racial equity and the utilization of racial equity tools to evaluate all 107 actions in your climate action plan. That means it's being prioritized, it's being focused on, and it is being measured. It is a great example. When local leaders take action on climate, they take it on behalf of all of your residents. And that's the future. And that's where we are committed to working with you as you move forward. Now, I can tell you NLC supporting cities, towns, and villages in sustainability and resilience efforts is something that as CEO that I will continue to push. Not all children are able to experience the benefit of access to nature. The inequities in park and housing development, unequal investments in facilities and nature access and hiring, disregard for cultural differences and how we connect with nature, all of those things contribute to systems of inequity. And I want to, again, tell you that the team at the National League of Cities, we will work with you. We'll work with the Western Land Reserve Conservancy to expand our connection to nature in Cleveland and cities across Northeast Ohio. So with that, I want to talk about what's next for us. I know that you can't do it all. We are just so excited that you have a great partner with the mayor, with my colleague forever, former council member, Councilman Zone, and the city council. So we must work with each other to make sure that we move forward in this work. The next phase will look different for all communities. Each local leader in those cities know what's best for your residents. But a couple of major bills currently in Congress today need some action, and we need you to help us do that. It is critical that President Biden address climate change through a clean energy standard, and he's committed to that. And we need to make sure that we reach out to our congressional leaders to let them know that we are pushing with them so that we can get all of these bills across the line. We need to make sure that we push for more dollars in the Build Back America bill and the reconciliation bill. We need to make sure that we need these investments, not because we're investing in 2015 with the Clean Power Plan. We need to invest beyond now. We need to keep the pressure on that as we develop these policies nationally as well as locally, that they're developed with resilience in mind. They're developed with equity, racial equity in mind, and that it's not just enough to say it, it needs to be focused, and it needs to be a priority nationally as well as local. So I'm just going to stop there because I get passionate about this, because I know that the impact of public policy can make such a difference. The focus on the areas that we are focused on makes a difference. And we have to make sure that Jason knows that it's not just on him to push sustainability and resilience. It's not just on him to have the voice around racial equity. It's not just the mayor who should be pushing for this. The city council, council member Zone. It has to be all of our responsibility to make sure that as we look around the table, we see the business community and they're pushing for racial equity and sustainability and resilience. Our stakeholders related to our community-based organization, they understand that they are a priority in this process. And finally, I think that if we can get all of our children, especially in the BIPOC community, to just experience outdoors and just understand how it can help improve your life, your mental health, and the environment, man, Cleveland would be better, and so will our nation. So thank you all very much. And I'll answer a few questions if I have time. Thank you, Jason.
Thank you, Clarence. And it's always good to hear the bigger perspective and know that we're not alone. So I think we'll probably have some questions starting to pop up here in a few minutes. But while we're waiting for some of those to populate, I guess you talked a little bit about the pandemic and the way that has kind of impacted us, and some of the other concerns and some of the racial justice issues that we saw last year. How have those really driven change around climate action, And how, as American cities, do we start to think about this differently? We've tried to be very explicit about it in Cleveland, but what should we be looking at? What are the emerging trends that you see, and how can we respond to the pandemic in a more equitable and sustainable fashion?
Yeah, I do think one of the things that we all, especially of those that work in this space with municipalities, cities all over America, we knew that there were challenges, and we knew that there were differences in the way in which it showed in people of color and communities of color. But somehow the data became more exact and lifted up more in the press. The data about education, the gap, the data about health care, the data about access to jobs, education levels. I mean, it went on, in housing, affordability, gaps, quality of the housing in communities. So when all of those issues became more in the face of America, I think that got the attention that not only are those issues important, but as it relates to climate and sustainability, it also became put in our face about the gaps there, that the quality of the housing was not equal. The issues related to the quality of water in Black communities around America became more of an issue. The issues of siting historical facilities, incinerators, breaking up the community with highways and bridges. All of those things are now being shared more equally and more openly. And therefore, our mayors and council members are saying it's time now that we address those issues, those equity issues. And the America Rescue Plan is just one way that we're saying, now Cleveland, now New York, now Toledo, Dayton, now you got these dollars. What are you going to do with it? And what we're asking, Jason, and Matt knows this, we're asking American leaders to address those gaps. This is our opportunity. This is once in a lifetime opportunity. So I'm excited that you guys are pushing this agenda through this conference.
It's good to hear it. It's good to get that kind of affirmation. And when we think about kind of the resources that are going to be available, and ARPA and the other possible bills that are coming through, what are cities saying, and what should we be saying to the federal government in terms of our prioritization around climate solutions? What should we say to the federal government? How should we have that discussion?
Well, I think I said a little bit about it when I talked about what is happening in Louisiana, what's happening, the hurricanes, the fires in California and Oregon, the floods in my home state of Florida, where the beach is eroding daily. Miami Beach, you drive down the street after a rain and it's flooded. We need to acknowledge that our climate is changing. We need to put policies in place that help local governments to be able to right-size our systems and to improve our systems and sustainability. We need to plan for electric vehicles. It's crazy that you really can't ride our federal systems, highway systems, with electric vehicles, because you don't know on the turnpikes and other places where the next stop is and how you're going to be able to recharge. I think we need to tell our federal leaders that they need to actually invest in these energy programs, support President Biden's plans and acts that he has put in the existing bills, the transportation infrastructure bill. First of all, let's pass one, and then put the dollars where it can really be impacted and be impactful. It has to get down to the mayors, the county leaders, so that we can actually implement programs that's going to make an impact. Right now, if it gets to the state level, to be honest, it doesn't get to us as quickly as it needs to.
So I don't want to monopolize the time. Matt, any questions from you for Mr. Anthony?
Sure.
This is your
Thanks, Chief. Clarence, talk about the dynamics in Washington with kind of the polarization of what happens there and how you work with municipal leaders across our country, Republican, Democrat, independents, urban, rural, to reach consensus on climate issues and sustainability issues. Could you talk a little bit about that, please?
Yeah, I do think there's no question. There is a divide, partisan divide here in Washington. And one of the things about the National League of Cities is we do not get involved in who's president, whether they're Democrat or Republican. We focus on trying to get issues across the line, working with both sides. And if, President Biden is supporting policy that supports and helps cities, that's who we work with. If former President Trump proposed something that was going to be helpful to cities, we worked with the previous president. And I think that is how we hope that the existing energy bill and the water and wastewater bills that are being proposed in Congress right now, we hope that they would work together in that way. It is a very difficult time right now, honestly, Matt, but we're going to stay focused. We're not going to get in the middle of, the blue and red discussion. I'm committed to cities, and that's what we're going to work toward.
So I think, Clarence, we've pushed you to the end of our time together here. I really appreciate you taking the time to share your perspective with us and help us kind of see how we fit into the bigger picture in Cleveland. And it's always reaffirming to hear that we're not alone and that we've got a lot of support and options together. So I really want to thank you for taking the time to share those insights. And I think you gave us a lot to think about as we think about what the path forward is going to look like. And we look forward to kind of continuing to engage with the National League of Cities and all of our partners around the nation through the membership that we as a city have in that organization. And again, thank you very much for taking the time to speak with us. And Matt, it's always good to see you in every forum as well.
Well, Jason, thank you so much for having the National League of Cities, our past president, as well as me. Actually, it gives me a chance to say hello to Matt. Since he got out of office, he hasn't called me at all, Jason. He dropped me like a hot potato.
Clarence, don't feel bad. He does it to me as well.
All right, long as it's an equal opportunity dropping, I'm fine. But I love you, Matt.
I love both of you. I love you too.
I said hi. I miss her. Okay, bye-bye.
Thanks. All right, everybody. Thank you for kind of getting us through that, and hopefully we learned some good stuff from Clarence Anthony. I think it was a really interesting keynote to see how we fit into the larger perspective.